Hey, Russ, could you say a word or two about that offensive line? Upon further review, there were some holding calls, but they sure seemed, at least the first group, while it was in, sure seemed powerful and controlling against Howard.
Yeah, they did a nice job. Anytime you can rush for over 200 yards in a game, that means something good's happening up front there. We did have some hold. One wasn't a hold. I don't know why it got called, and the other one was a tight end. So really, I think we had two on our offensive line, but it's a learning process. We know we got to keep our hands in. We can't grab them, and but obviously they did a really nice job when you rush for 226 yards. So awful proud of them.
Hey, if I could just follow up by asking how much of that is having good players, how much of that is having good players who have played together now for a few years?
Well, it definitely helps guys that have played together. And, we're still, I know Cade played a lot at guard. Ryan Cole, last spring, got hurt in the first game. And so I'm sure there's some meshing going on there. But obviously, Joe Moore's played a lot of football. Clayton's played a lot of football, and Tim Coleman. So, yeah, they've played together for a long time. I know we got Clayton on here. You might want to ask him that question, and he can probably answer it better than me.
Thank you.
Hey, Coach, your assessment of your defense was not all that flattering at halftime. It had softened a little bit by the end of the game with a shutout in the second half. Now that you've had a chance to look over the film a little bit, what is your assessment of how the defense overall played on Saturday?
Just probably about how I felt at halftime. With too many big plays, I think we gave up 9 big plays. We missed tackles, had some poor angles to the football. Not everybody played bad. I mean, we had guys that played well on defense, no question about that. But, it takes 11 guys playing defense to be really good. And, and I hope these defensive guys understand that the high expectations we have for them. We got good players, and, we expect dominant performances from them. When we don't get it, kind of a little aggravated. And, when you got good, at least we got good players. We know that we can get a lot of those things fixed, but, just too many big plays, too many yards. We got to be better than that.
Howard was a tough scout because you knew so little about them. You probably know a little more about Lehigh. What's the different challenge that they pose this week?
I think they're all a challenge, but the first game, you just don't know. Like, we saw some things that we hadn't seen. I mean, and they did some things did some things to us and caught us. We thought we got it fixed, and we really, didn't during the course of the game. We saw some things that we were doing that ultimately probably didn't, as coaches, we didn't put our guys in the best possible positions to be successful. We fixed that as a coaching staff. Early in the season, I'm sure Lehigh will be, they'll have some wrinkles for us, no question. They'll see what we do, what hurt us, try to exploit it. I think Lehigh, if they don't have 6 turnovers, that's not how the game ends up. I mean, it just doesn't. But you can't turn the ball over, and I guarantee they're working really hard this week to not turn the football over. That would have been a better football game. Whether they would have won the game or not, probably not. But it's not a 47-3 game by any stretch of the imagination, and that's what happens. You turn it over, and it just starts kind of snowballing, and then before you know it, you're in late in the third quarter, and the game's over. But Lehigh will be better this week, no question. We have to play really well to win a game.
If I could ask one more, Coach, you had 1 turnover, I think, against Howard, but you turned it into 7 points. How important is that going to be moving forward?
Yeah, well, we actually turned it into 8 because we went for 2 on that one. So we got an extra point out of it. But Yeah, it's critical. I mean, games are won and lost whether you're taking care of the football or you're creating turnovers. We have to create more turnovers. Um, we have to get after the quarterback. I mean, Tyler had a strip sack, and that's what you're looking for, on a fumble there. We need more of that. When the ball's in the air, we got to break on the football and make picks and pick the football and be in the right position. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be critical that we create turnovers. But the most critical part is that we secure the football offensively, because I think defensively, there have been teams that are great defenses that hadn't caused a whole lot of turnovers. We want to, but I want to play sound defense. I want to get them on the ground. The one positive thing, Lane, was they were only 1 of 11 on third downs and 0 for 2 on fourth downs. That's a positive. And sometimes I expect so much out of our guys that, I may have said that in a team meeting that, I pat them on the back, which is great. But sometimes as a defensive guy, again, I expect so much out of these guys. And I think they expect so much out of themselves. I guarantee they weren't thrilled with how that thing went. And, sometimes you shake your head. Well, you held 14 points, 1 of 11 on third downs. Again, expectations, and where I think based on the ability of our players, we should be a dominant defense.
Coach Huseman, there were 6 FCS wins over FBS opponents last weekend. I wonder if you could share your thoughts on that. And is this encouraging or simply a case of the specific matchups?
I think a lot of it has to do with matchups. I think FCS programs are plenty good enough, to win those games, which obviously they showed this past weekend, and it'll continue to happen throughout the course of the season. But it does a lot has to do with with matchups and how you match up against a team. I'm sure I would bet if you looked at every one of those games that, they didn't get hurt at all on special teams. There were no big plays on special teams, or they played really well on special teams. They probably didn't make a whole lot of mistakes, didn't turn the ball over, a lot. And then when you play an FCS or an FBS school, I mean, you got to secure the football, and you can't get beat on special teams. And I think if you have good enough players, then you can compete. You can get off of blocks, you can block them, you can throw and catch. But I think you have to secure the football, and you can't give them anything big in the kicking game. And I would bet if you looked at all those games, that's what happened.
When you talk about the special teams, I guess your emphasis is A, on speed, and B, on just depth, having better and more athletes available on those teams.
Yeah. So what happens is, all of a sudden, anytime you're kicking the ball, you're playing 100 yards of field, and I can't run Tyler Dressler down on every kicking unit. I just can't do it. I mean, he's got to play defense, and I can't run Wheeler down on every special teams. And so, you play with younger guys, some backups on offense and defense. And all of a sudden, the field is 100. I mean, it's 50 by 100. You're covering the whole thing, and that's where they get you. Whether it's, we played Alabama, and when I was at Chattanooga, and they return a punt 80 yards on us for a touchdown, and then we turn the ball over. Next thing you know, it's a 10-0 game. Next thing you blink an eye, and it's 24-0. And now you're scrambling. So, yeah, I mean, the field is so every time in the kicking game, the field expands. Defensively, offensively, you can manipulate the field, no question. And but I think too, confidence going into those games. I'm sure East Tennessee was confident going in against Vanderbilt and felt like they matched up well. So it was a good weekend for FCS football, no question.
Thank you.
Hey, Russ, all that said, how do you think your special teams performed?
Hey, John,
Saturday?
how are you going to get all that in one article there?
We'll
that's a
figure it out.
5-page paper right there. That's a dissertation. You're going to take a piece or two and make me look stupid, aren't you?
Nonsense. No, we wouldn't do that,
No.
Coach.
I'm sorry, Bob.
John's more important. I look forward to seeing that. Hey, how do you think your special teams did with new punter? And you had mentioned kind of a little new alignment on who you put on coverage teams. What's your evaluation of those guys that you were coaching up?
Did a great job. Our kickoff coverage was excellent. Our kicker kicked it tremendously everywhere we wanted it kicked. Jake Larson did an unbelievable job. Other than the missed tackle on a punt, I thought we would have net punted really well. And we covered well, and he punted it really well. Our kickoff return, we had, I think, 2 33-yard returns out to the 40. So I was pleased with where and then obviously on our punt return unit, two balls got IB in the sun, and they got some big rolls out of those things. If he catches those, it's probably a great day, but nothing he can do on that. I mean, that sun there is tough. So, but I was proud of our guys on special teams, especially the guys kicking the football.
Odd question here. Is there anything you can do to practice catching those punts at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon for our home games?
Unless we take him out there separately, it's always bad. I mean, you play a 3:30 game, and it sits right over that building there, and nobody can see. Like at least at 2 o'clock, our wideouts can see the ball, and people can see it as they're going. It's really when it gets up there at 2 o'clock on our punt return guy. And obviously, if they're punting the other way, then you're good. It doesn't affect you. I just know sometimes we're out there at 3:30 or 4 o'clock, and that sun gets just above Robins Center. It's brutal. There's not a person that can see a thing at that point in time going in that direction. So you can't play just based on quarters, because you never know when they're going to punt the football and when you're going to be out there. And it looked like it really, I think it was at the third quarter where it really got us. I think it was. Yeah.
Hey, Clayton, John O'Connor from the Richmond paper here. Thank you for coming, to you and Tyler. You have started now 22 consecutive games in the middle of all of it. What is the secret to protecting your health and staying available?
Well, actually, right after this, I got to go to treatment for the second time today. So that'd be one thing. And I come back and get in the ice bath. But during the week, just taking extra precautions, extra stretching, extra time in the weight room, extra time in the trainer room, just anything you can do to get that advantage. I know there's a lot of guys we got. I know Tim's played, I think he's 27, I saw on the game notes.
Yeah.
And he got that extra year on me when he was at his old school. So just that extra time you can take for yourself to get loose and get recovered.
If I could follow up by staying on the same path, and that is in the spring, obviously, Tom Elia played a little bit at center, and coach gave you a little time off. I'm wondering how you thought about it then in the spring, and maybe how you think about it now in terms of maybe saving some wear and tear on you back in March.
I think Tom came in with like 6 minutes left in the third quarter this past game. So it's kind of nice. I think I played 55 reps and he had around 30. So if you'd had that full game week one, I might have been feeling different right now, but it's nice having that guy behind you. There's no real drop off from our ones and twos. I mean, we have really two deep across the board up front, and we were able to roll those guys in. I know even this week we were able to have Santiago. He was a freshman this past year, and he was able to get some reps in, and we were glad to have him out there. It's just good to have two deep across the board. What's up?
Thank you, Clayton.
Hey, Tyler, you heard Coach's assessment of the defense and his evaluation of the expectations. Your reaction to how you all played and whether or not how close you are to those expectations you have for yourself each week.
Yeah, I'll probably echo what he said. Being a fifth year on this defense, I'm extremely disappointed with our performance. Looking back at the film, effort was very poor across the board. Our technique was not there at all. Our discipline, our technique, all those things just really, they weren't there. And we expect a lot more of ourselves, especially the standard we set back in the spring. So I take that on myself personally. And we're going to get it fixed. I could promise you guys that it's going to be a different week next week. So
for both of you guys, and I asked Coach this as well, you didn't know a ton about Howard. You might know a little more about Lehigh. What's the preparation? How is it different this week when you might know just a little bit more about the opponent?
Yeah. So with Howard, I know it was a little difficult. We weren't exactly sure what they were going to run, and they did throw some things at us that we weren't prepared for. But that's football. You just got to adjust with it. With Lehigh, we do have a few more games from the spring from them, and then we do have the game from Villanova, and we are fully aware of like some of their weapons and their personnel. So we do have a little bit more of information, which is an advantage, I believe.
Yeah, for last week, I mean, Howard came out with pretty much how they looked in the spring. It wasn't anything much different. And then on the Lehigh aspect, they bring a lot of stuff. I know up front they have multiple fronts. They bring a lot of blitzes, and we're gonna try to do our best to kind of counteract that. I know they run the same stuff as they ran in the spring, so we have a good 5 games to watch film off of.
Hey,
Clayton, how much, excuse me, Bob.
go ahead, John. No, go ahead, John. Keep rolling.
Clayton, how much of being good on the offensive line as a group has to do with having good players, and how much of it is the cohesion and chemistry built over repetition and repetition?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think personally, I have the 2 best guards in the conference playing beside me, Ryan Cole and Kate Sayers. And then at tackle, we have Joe and Tim able to roll Gavin in there, and then Tom behind me. We have really good players, but also I think we have 90-something or maybe 100 starts now together. So it's good to have that cohesion and be able to play together, and having the level of players we have just takes us to the next step.
Thank you, Clayton.
Hey, Clayton, if you believe in the theory that you make your most improvement between game 1 and game 2, where do you hope the offense, I mean, pretty good numbers on the scoreboard and the stat sheet. Where do you hope the offense takes the next step in improvement between game 1 and game 2?
I think up front, we had a lot of leakage. I mean, the stats look good on paper, but we didn't play to our standard. And there's a lot of stuff we can make or change, make corrections for this next week. So I think there are some stunts and looks that we didn't do our best with this past week. And we know that for the next few weeks, we're going to have those looks. Unless we can change them, and they're going to bring the same stuff back to us. So we have to be able to make those mistakes or fix those mistakes, and unless we're going to get exposed for it against these teams we're coming up with.